So the advantage of asking
One of them.
is that we don't hear the music.
Excellent.
To have it work.
Good. That's the best.
Yes.
The best way that having a backup thing can work.
Yes.
By having one just totally alleviate.
Yeah.
very pleased to have you with us here this morning, whether you're here online or in person. If you're joining us online this morning, welcome. If you're logged in with a Google account, we hope you will say hello in the chat. We especially want to welcome our visitors and newcomers. We hope to have the chance to get to know you better. You can make a name tag and fill out a visitor's form in the lobby where you came in. And there are also pronoun stickers for newcomers and current members alike, so you can add them to your name tag. If you're here in person, we hope you'll stay with us after the service for social hour. We'll pick up food in the social room back here and eat it in the sanctuary. You can enter through the door over here by the piano and exit over here by the Chalice. However you are with us, you can find out more about us and request to be on our mailing list by visiting our webpage, www.ucwc.org. Unitarian Universalism holds that from great good comes wide diversity. So, whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever your heritage, and from wherever your beliefs spring, we are pleased that you are here. Let's walk a while together. We have some announcements today. On Saturday, December 10th, there will be a candlelight vigil for all victims of gun violence in Chester County. That is going to be from 2 to 3. That information is in the bulletin. The time in the Felitarian is incorrect. That says 2:30. It should be at 2. So make sure you take note of that. Also, we are going to be having our annual Christmas Eve pageant, which is a wonderful event. If you'd like to participate, please email Cassie to let her know you'd like to do that. There are lots of different roles for all manner of participation levels, whether you want to act a lot up here on stage or just help out with the costumes. You can do lots of different things. Our chalice lighting words are attributed to the Buddha. I feel like the Buddha is one of those figures who get so famous that they get a lot of things they may not have said, but I think this one works. Thousands of candles can be lighted from a single candle, and the life of the candle will not be shortened. Happiness never decreases by being shared.
First, I want to invite those standing in the back to come on in. Maybe it's time we put some more chairs out. This is good to see. There's a little space in the front row. There's a few spaces where there's some chairs. So come on in, have a seat. Our opening hymn this morning is set to an old German hymn tune, but the words come from the great Indian Buddhist poet Naidu. So please rise in body and spirit as we sing 183, Winds of Change Forever Blow.
gather,
aspiring to be a thriving, caring, and welcoming community that supports each person's spiritual journey, embraces diversity, challenges us to live responsibly, and is a catalyst for a just and compassionate world.
Thank you, Eric. Our wonderful religious educator, Cassie Lengel, is here and has a story for us.
Good morning, everyone. I said, here comes the sun. Oh, no one went do-do-do-do. Couple. Well, today's service is in honor of Bodhi Day, commemorating when the Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree and gained enlightenment. That's a big word, enlightenment. We hear it maybe when we think of the verb to enlighten someone, which is to make them aware of something they perhaps didn't know. We might even think of the period of history known as the Enlightenment, a time of great thinking and reason and philosophy. Well, before the Buddha became the Buddha, he was just an ordinary man, trying to figure out life. We might think of his enlightenment as a time of deep thinking and listening to the world. Then I always imagine a light bulb, pop, helping the Buddha to realize some great truths about life. Only I could get one of those light bulbs. Well, as UUs, we have many different sources we go to in order to try to figure out life and find our place and reason in this world. I thought it might help us to think about these questions, maybe some answers, as we listen to the Zen Buddhist story, Bird's Nest. Before we begin, let's settle in for a story with a nice deep breath together. Ready? Long ago in China, there lived a monk who perched in a certain tree to meditate, no matter if it was sunny or even windy or rainy. Because of this, he was named Bird's Nest by the people in the village nearby. Many of these villagers passed under this tree when they went out hunting or gathering, and they began to get used to the monk who sat up in the branches. Sometimes they even stopped to talk with him, and the villagers found he was kind and thoughtful as he listened to their troubles and questions, and sometimes even suggested answers. After more years, the monk's wise reputation began to spread and attracted visitors from near and far to speak with him and ask for advice. One day, word even reached the governor of the province, and he decided he wanted to visit the monk as well. So the governor set off through the woods, and after several days, he finally found the tree, and he saw the monk high up in the branches, with his face to the sun. The governor looked up and shouted, "Bird's Nest, I am the governor of the province, and I've come a great distance to ask you a most important question." Then he waited for a reply, but he only heard the leaves and the bird song. So he continued, This is my question for you, Bird's Nest. What is it that all the wise ones have taught? Can you tell me the most important thing the Buddha ever said? Again, the only reply was the rustle of leaves. Finally, the monk's voice drifted along the wind down to the governor. This is your answer. Don't do bad things. Always do good things. That's what all the Buddhas have taught. The governor grew angry. He didn't walk all this way in the woods for such a simple answer. Don't do bad things? Always do good things? Why, I've known that since I was 3 years old. At this, the monk turned and looked down at the governor with a wry smile. Yes, the 3-year-old knows it, but the 80-year-old still finds it very difficult to do. We might think of the Buddha and enlightenment as some great wisdom, a secret we must learn. But when we remember that the Buddha started out as just a man trying to figure out life, we can start to understand that maybe the big secret isn't something that can be taught, but it is something we have to come to understand and accept in our hearts, and it's a way that we act with others. So in summary, don't do bad things. Always do good things. And now I invite our children and youth to join me, and we'll go downstairs for our lessons today.
Well, I expect with that message that classroom discipline will be easier today in the religious education. Thank you, Cassie. There are many ways that we support our congregation. We support our congregation with the time that we give, with the love that we give. We support our congregation when we make a pledge of support, and we support our congregation with the gifts that we give each week in our offering. Whether you are at home or online, you can participate. Simply, if you're at home, all you need to do is either send us a check, or you can go to ucwc.org/giving and make an online donation. We have a PayPal portal. Or you can just add a little bit to what you already give in your pledge each month. If this is your first time here, whether you are here online or in person, then please allow yourself to be our guest and let this collection pass you by. We'll now receive our morning offering. For these gifts and for all that we give in many ways to all of our communities, we are truly grateful. Our first reading is a statement which was given by the Buddhists at the 1993 World Parliament of Religions. It says, Shakyamuni Buddha, the founder of Buddhism, was not a god and was not God. He was a human being who attained full enlightenment through meditation and showed us the path of spiritual awakening and freedom. Therefore, Buddhism is not a religion of God. Buddhism is a religion of wisdom, enlightenment, and compassion. Like the worshipers of God who believe that salvation is available to all through confession of sin and a life of prayer, We Buddhists believe that salvation and enlightenment are available to all through a removal of defilements and delusion and a life of meditation. However, unlike those who believe in God who is separate from us, Buddhists believe that Buddha, which means one who is awake and enlightened, is inherent in us all as Buddha nature or Buddha mind. And our second reading is a popular retelling of a passage in a Buddhist scripture, the Anguttara Nikaya, Dona Sutta 4.36. It's, as I say, it's a popular retelling. The Brahman Dona saw the Buddha sitting under a tree and was impressed by his peaceful air of alertness and his good looks. He asked the Buddha, "Are you a god?" "No, Brahman, I am not a god." "Then an angel?" "No, indeed, Brahman." "A spirit, then?" "No, I am not a spirit." "Then what are you?" "I am awake." So I'd like to invite you to sing a Buddhist mantra with me. This was given to me by my dear friend and our former neighbor here in Westchester, Nancy Madela, who was a leader in the Westchester Buddhist Sangha before retiring to Maine. And the words are very simple Sanskrit. Om Manye Padme Hum. And I'm going to say that again, and then you can repeat. Om Manye Padme Hum. Om Manye Padme Hum. It means the jewel is in the lotus, and it is said to be a mantra of compassion from the Bodhisattva Avalokitesvara. In Buddhism, a bodhisattva is one who has found enlightenment but has chosen to stay and help others on the path. So this mantra is in two parts. What I sing may vary in words and melody. Your part will always be the same. Miriam's going to help out with your part. So I will sing, and the choir is going to help out too. So I will sing something like, oh. It takes me a second to get it every time. Om Manye Padme Hum. Manye Padme Hum. So you see what happened there is, as I ended on Manye Padme Hum, you all begin, Om Manye Padme Hum. Try that. Om Manye Padme Hum. And as you heard, you begin singing on the last note of every line that I sing, which sounds harder than it is. It's just a regular call and response, except this one has call waiting. And Miriam and the choir will lead the response, so you can follow them. What I sing may vary a little bit, but you just keep singing that same part over and over again. Buddhist monks might sing this for hours. We'll go just a few minutes. But this mantra is just as powerful whether you're in the room or at home on YouTube, so please do sing with us. Om Manye Padme Hum. Om Manye Padme Hum. Om Manye Padme Manye Padme
Om. Manye Padme Om.
Om Manye Padme
Om. Manye Padme Om.
Norarera Surujai. Norarera Surujai. Manye Padme Om Manye Padme Thank you. Well, December 7th, 1997 was a cold evening in Boston, so I was bundled up as I hurried across the Divinity School parking lot at Harvard. With my head down, protected against the elements, I nearly bumped into the small Japanese man heading the other way. It was Masatoshi Nagatomi, my professor in a course on cross-cultural Buddhist conceptions of nature. He was one of my favorite professors and people, and in many ways, I think a sage in his own right. Professor Nagatomi probably came closer to spiritual enlightenment than anyone I had yet encountered or have encountered since. I, on the other hand, was a somewhat smart-alecky, yet I like to believe well-intentioned graduate student, and we had developed a warm affection. The professor, like me, was bundled warmly against the cold, and he too had been rushing. We stopped in the parking lot to greet one another. He asked about my studies, and we spoke for a while about the final paper I was writing for him on transcendentalism, Huayan Buddhism, and the environment. I miss those heady days. I asked him how he was. "Oh, terribly busy," he told me. "Yesterday, I went to the Asian Studies Department Christmas party, and now I'm on my way from the Divinity Faculty Christmas party. Tomorrow, I'm attending the Buddhist Association Bodhi Day party. I have time for nothing else," he said. "Perhaps when I truly find nirvana, I will be able to deal with this." I wonder, he reflected, if the Buddha had this problem. I thought for a second and then asked him, "Did the Buddha go to many parties?" Professor Nagatomi laughed and, in one of the great honors of my life, bowed. The truth is that outside student Buddhist associations, the Japanese holiday of Bodhi Day or Rohatsu is not generally celebrated with punch and cookies. Instead, it's a time of intense Zen meditation, sitting for hours in the Buddhist community or Sangha. Although it comes on the 8th of December each year, it bears little resemblance to the solstice festivals of Hanukkah, Christmas, or Saturnalia. There are no lights beyond those ordinarily lit in a temple. It is merely a time for meditation, reflection, and community. What Bodhi Day does have in common with Christmas is that it marks the beginning of one of the world's great religions, the entrance into the world of a teacher and a teaching in which millions would find a kind of salvation from suffering. The story begins with a birth, though there is another holiday in May to commemorate that. And like that of another great religious figure, this birth came with a prophecy. The baby was Siddhartha, sometimes called Shakyamuni, a prince in India, an heir to the mighty kingdom of the Shakyas. Like other great religious leaders, the stories of his birth vary greatly. What they agree on is that not long after, his family was visited by a seer, or perhaps by many. And the seers agreed that he would live a remarkable life, and that he would very probably grow to retreat from the world and become a great religious teacher, perhaps the greatest who had ever lived. Some, though, thought that if this could be prevented, he would instead become a great king. The seer Asita wept with grief upon giving this prophecy. For the time has come, he said, when I must pass away, just when he has come, who shall deliver the extinction of birth. Now, you might notice that phrase, the extinction of birth. If it strikes you as odd that anyone would wish to see the extinction of birth, you're not alone. Westerners usually think of life after death as a good thing. But in the Hindu world, out of which Buddhism grew, death is simply a door into the next life, a life very often characterized by hardship and suffering. Our actions in this life, our karma, determine the life to come. A good person might be reborn as a god, or a bad one as a worm. The cycle of birth and rebirth, death and death again, continues until the soul can escape in what the Hindus call moksha and the Buddhists call nirvana. At the moment of nirvana, we end our separated existence and rejoin the great whole out of which all things emerged. That is the goal, the salvation of Buddhism and Hinduism. End the cycle of death and rebirth. Or as the Buddhist said to the hot dog vendor, make me one with everything. That's right. No, I'm not going to apologize for that. Now, it's easy to forgive Siddhartha's father for his response to the prophecies of his son's life. He was a warrior. He was a practical man. So, caring only for his son's welfare, he immediately took steps to keep this kid as far away as possible from anything having anything to do with religion. Instead, he taught the young boy what it meant to be a king, and Siddhartha learned quickly. And when he was old enough, the king plied his son with women, with riches, with luxury. He insisted his son live in the upper stories of the palace so that he might never have to see the real world. Siddhartha was married to a beautiful maiden. The young man grew up strong, intelligent, and to his father's utter delight, insufferably self-indulgent. I have often considered the story of the Buddha's awakening a fable for overprotective parents. The prince had never seen suffering, unhappiness, or death. He didn't know they existed. He had no idea that life over time decayed, or that there was such a thing as loss. He was, as his father had planned for him, utterly attached to the world and the sensuality with which he had been imprisoned. At long last, Siddhartha began to listen to the stories of his servants and his concubines, who spoke of the beauty of the gardens on the palace grounds. Wishing to see this beauty for himself, he prepared to leave his gilded cage. The king gave orders that all commoners, along with anyone who was old, ill, mentally unstable, or poor, be carefully removed from his son's path. Now, Buddhism doesn't require a belief in any gods. And even for those who believe in gods, they aren't very important. But some of the old stories still turn on the actions of divine beings. So it is said that the gods conjured up the image the young prince saw on his journey. A man with a face worn deep with wrinkles, hobbling on a stick. Startled, Siddhartha asked his charioteer the meaning of the wrinkles and the cane. "He's old," said the charioteer simply. These small words struck the prince like thunder, and he immediately returned to his palace, which suddenly seemed an empty shell of a place. Siddhartha had begun to realize that all things are impermanent, and ultimately everything we hold precious fades away. But after a time in the palace, he did begin to recover from the shock and once again became enmeshed in the world's pleasures. And after a time, he set out once more to see the world. This time, he saw a man who was terribly ill. What kind of world is this, he asked, in which people suffer with old age and illness, and the world does not care? On his third journey, he saw a corpse and awoke to the reality of death. The young man had now discovered the first of the 4 noble truths that would become central to Buddhism. Life, he realized, inevitably involves suffering. Dukkha in Pali, which is the language of Buddhism. The young man's journey to the Bodhi tree and his enlightenment had begun. For all of his entire life, the prince had accepted the privilege and protection of his father's palace. Now that he could see this truth of life in a flash, he was completely unprepared. He wept at the plowing of the earth. He wept at the weariness of the farmers and the oxen, the death of worms and insects destroyed by the plow. He could find no delight at all in the sensual pleasures with which he had always been surrounded. Leaving his friends behind, he sat under a tree, the first of many beneath which he would meditate, and began to think. Wondering at the impermanence of all things, he came to the second noble truth of the religion to come, that the cause of all of this suffering is our attachment to objects, to pleasures, and most of all to things as they are. With this realization, he found another truth as well, one of profound love and kindness. Even before the Buddha, there were some who managed to attain release from the cycle of rebirth. Siddhartha saw many and sought to emulate them. But he also wanted more than this. He felt deep compassion for all other living things. He vowed that when he achieved his own release, he would stay and teach others. The man who had been a prince now became a homeless beggar. As Siddhartha studied the ways of the yogis and holy teachers, he developed a reputation and became renowned as a great religious leader. Soon he couldn't go anywhere without a crowd of disciples and monks, but through all that, he still did not believe he had found true enlightenment. He tried all the conventional ways, starving himself with only a single fruit, a seed, and a grain of rice to eat each day. His body wasted away, but his spirit remained strong, and his disciples bowed before him. But after a while, he began to realize that although the deprivation of his body had gained him fame and respect, it hadn't moved him any further on the path to enlightenment. Siddhartha needed to think clearly, and he realized he couldn't do that when his body was malnourished. So he went to the river, he took a good bath, and enjoyed a delicious and filling meal. He had discovered another teaching central to Buddhism, the middle path. Neither attachment to the sensual pleasures of the world nor attachment to artificial deprivation. Release from suffering, he finally realized, comes only when we let go of all of our attachments. And this became the third noble truth of Buddhism, a truth that applied just as much to our attachments, as I said, to a life of deprivation as to material things. On the eve of his enlightenment, the holy man went to the mountain, placed himself under a gigantic fig tree, now called the Bodhi tree, and determined to sit until he found ultimate understanding. Some stories say that he underwent temptation by Mara, the god of illusions, but still the holy man sat.
He began to understand the three noble truths and a fourth as well, an eightfold path to nirvana. Right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right meditation. A week went by, and at last he stood up, the Buddha, the enlightened one whose teachings would lead all to escape the sufferings of life and death. When the Buddha returned to the world, two things happened. The first was that the yogis and the gurus that he knew, all of his old disciples and friends who had followed him for so long, saw that he was eating well, and they all left in disgust. The second was that he began to expound his teaching, the Dharma, of the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. There were many miracles and mysterious events that took place during the life of the Buddha, but of them all, the most important to Buddhists is still the day when a holy man, body freshly washed and nourished, sat under the Bodhi tree and became one of the great spiritual teachers of humanity. This is the moment honored in the statues of the Buddha that we've all seen, legs folded, belly full, and a very slight but genuine smile of compassion. He was not a god, and though Buddhists honor his memory and teachings, they do not worship him. He was, as he said, awake. The Buddha himself never claimed that his was the only path or that it could address everyone's needs. Attachments to a set of beliefs as the only truth, he felt, was just as destructive as any other form of attachment. He said, if you find truth in any religion or philosophy, then accept that truth without prejudice. I think this may be part of why Buddhist teachings and practices have become so widespread, even among those who don't believe in the cycle of reincarnation or the release of nirvana. It's also why so many different forms of Buddhism have taken root. The Buddhist scriptures include literally thousands of books, and no two branches of the religion accept quite the same group of them. But the central teachings, the reality of suffering, its cause and its cure, remain consistent throughout the Buddhist world. And we also may learn much from the Buddhist's life and teachings. We also suffer because of our attachments to things as they exist right now. When we learn to let go of some of these attachments, we free ourselves to move forward in the life of the Spirit. It isn't the only path, but it can be a good path. Zen Buddhists teach that all of us are enlightened already, and that our attachments just keep us from realizing it. That can also be a valuable teaching as we look within and examine everything that gets in the way, that keeps us from the truly spiritual state to which we aspire. We also can be inspired by Zen stories, the story of a Zen monk who waking to find a burglar in the house, gave that thief everything he owned and wished he could give him the moon. Or we can learn from the story of the sage chased by a tiger who ran and ran until he jumped off a cliff and hanging by one branch reached over to grab a strawberry growing nearby, and as he fell, knew only how wonderful the strawberry tasted. We also can benefit from the many and distinct forms of meditation practiced by Buddhist communities around the world. And as for me, I admit that like many, I can't follow all the Buddhist teachings. I go to holiday parties. I like some of my attachments, too much to let them go. My family, my friends, my community, my art. I don't believe in reincarnation. Most meditation is difficult for me, for any length of time. Still, I find incredible wisdom in the Buddha's teachings, the impermanence of all things. the suffering that too much attachment can bring anyone. So I try to learn and practice a middle path, informed but not directed by the teachings of others. Like the Buddha and his followers, I value compassion and human kindness above all. And this doesn't make me a Buddhist, just as only a few of us here are Buddhists, but as some Buddhists teach, all living things have Buddha nature. And maybe with the right teaching, the right mindfulness, the right effort, each of us can grow in our own Buddha nature and in universal loving kindness. If we do, and if we can, maybe each of us can begin to approach whatever enlightenment means for us. I think back to Professor Masatoshi Nagatomi rushing from one holiday party to another, and in the middle of it all, taking time to share some loving kindness with a student. I think how much we need loving kindness in this world, and how our attachments sometimes to things as they are can get in the way of our love and can get in the way of our kindness. I think of the impermanence of all things, and I try to remember through grief and sorrow that it is as much a blessing as a hardship. And I breathe deeply, sit, and let the mind awaken. I invite you to breathe and to sing as we enter the time in our service when we lift up the sorrows and the joys of our community. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love.
Good morning. My name is Kathy Vogt, and I'm a member of the pastoral care team and the contact person for the month of December. The first card is from a member that says, please send light to our young daughter-in-law who is seriously ill. We hold her, our daughter and granddaughter, in our hearts. Another concern for a member's dear friend who has recently found out has cancer. Please send healing thoughts. And a joy for a member who has finally got into a post-COVID clinic. And as always, we light one candle for those joys and concerns that are in our hearts but are unspoken.
Please sing. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. In Zen Buddhism, the holiday of Rohatsu or Bodhi Day is traditionally a time for intensive meditation. In this tradition, I invite you to relax your body, clear your minds of needless distractions and thoughts as we enter the community of quietness. A meditation adapted by Thich Nhat Hanh from the Buddha Gosa. May I be peaceful, happy, and light in body and spirit. May she be peaceful, happy, and light in body and spirit. May he be peaceful, happy, and light in body and spirit. May they be peaceful, happy, and light in body and spirit. May I be free from anger, afflictions, fear, and anxiety. May she be free from anger, afflictions, fear, and anxiety. May he be free from anger, afflictions, fear, and anxiety. May they be free from anger, afflictions, fear, and anxiety. May I learn to look at myself with the eyes of understanding and love. May she learn to look at herself with the eyes of understanding and love. May he learn to look at himself with the eyes of understanding and love. May they learn to look at themselves with the eyes of understanding and love. May I be able to recognize and touch the seeds of joy and happiness in myself. May she be able to recognize and touch the seeds of joy and happiness in her. May he be able to recognize and touch the seeds of joy and happiness in him. May they be able to recognize and touch the seeds of joy and happiness in them. May I learn to identify and see the sources of anger, craving, and delusion in myself. May she learn to identify and see the sources of anger, craving, and delusion in her. May he learn to identify and see the sources of anger, craving, and delusion in him. May they learn to identify and see the sources of anger, craving, and delusion in them. May I know how to nourish the seeds of joy in myself every day. May she know how to nourish the seeds of joy in herself every day. May he know how to nourish the seeds of joy in himself every day. May they know how to nourish the seeds of joy in themselves every day. May I be free from attachment and aversion, but not be indifferent. May she be free from attachment and aversion, but not be indifferent. May he be free from attachment and aversion, but not be indifferent. May they be free from attachment and aversion, but not be indifferent. I invite you to rise in body and spirit as we sing 1031 in the paperback, the teal hymnal, Filled with Loving Kindness. Close with words from the Japanese Buddhist sect, the Risho Kosei Kai, echoed in Cassie's story today. Commit no evil. Do all that is good. Fill your heart with compassion and your mind with understanding. For this is the teaching of all of the Buddhas. Go in peace.